Hi, I'm Kelly Rowlett-Presgrave. I'm president and CEO of Work With Your Hands, and we are so proud to be a sponsor of Power Women of the Trades podcast. You can reach us at workwithyourhands.com. Kelly at workwithyourhands.com is my email.
At Relentless Digital, we believe in breaking barriers and driving innovation. That's why we are extremely proud to sponsor the Power Women of the Trades podcast, supporting the voices and success of women in the home service industry. Together, we're creating a future where talent shines, regardless of gender, and diversity thrives. Join our journey at relentless-digital.com and always be relentless in your pursuit of excellence.
This episode of Power Women of the Trades is also brought to you by Forrest Perry of Forrest Perry Digital Marketing. Want to generate more leads for your service business? Trust his team to deliver quality new customer leads and protect your brand online. Check out perrymarketing.com today.
Welcome to Power Women of the Trades podcast. This show is all about breaking barriers and changing the game. Our guests will feature some of today's most successful female entrepreneurs and other advocates of our industry as well. Because if there's one thing we know for sure, female-led entrepreneurship drives change on multiple levels. We want to empower women in the trade industry like you so you can maximize your potential, stay balanced, achieve long-term success, and claim ownership over your life. Let's get started.
Welcome to Power Women of the Trades podcast. We are recording from the Women in HVAC conference in
Dallas, Texas.
So excited today. We have Rachel Helft from Argent Heating and Cooling in Washington, D.C. with us. And this was I just sprung this on her and was like, will you please record? Because she has such a cool story. But then also you say that you fangirled with me in the podcast last year at this event. But I'm kind of fangirling with you now because that was the first time, not like that someone came up and was like, I have listened to all of your episodes. And I was like, what? You know, you really do. And so cool to be here a year later and get to have you on as a guest. And I became Facebook friends with you and I've gotten to watch the last year of your life. And so there's been so much growth and so much. So tell us about yourself.
So first off, I have a 40-minute commute. So I'm always listening to, something in the car. And so, yes, I've listened to every single podcast.
Oh, I love it.
I love the content. And,
we have really great guests. And I'm glad, it's funny because in the very beginning, when we started the podcast and we were talking to sponsors, someone said, well, how many listeners do you think we'll have? And I was like, my husband, I don't know. We had no clue. And then now to see what's grown through the podcast and people listening. So we really appreciate that you're listening to us.
And last year I grabbed a bunch of stickers. When you walk into my office, it's all Women in HVAC and Power Women of the Trades podcast. Stickers everywhere on the doors that all the guys' offices, I just stick them on their desks and stuff.
Oh, good. That's awesome. Well, good. Hey, that's good. Well, it's all about advocacy, right? And reminding people that we're here and what we're doing. And so it's amazing.
Yeah. And I'm really excited for everyone to hear your story because it's a really good one.
So I knew you were going to ask me to be on because you had asked me last year and I was just no.
I'm not our first meeting, right? You were
ready. But so I was thinking about kind of my journey and what brought me here. And it probably, started when I was little. I was born to an unwed single mom and I watched her struggle. And then I had my dad who was this amazing entrepreneur. So growing up, I knew never want to be in a situation where I'm dependent on, a man or anyone for independence. And, growing up, my dad was really a blue collar guy and he was in tires. He had, he started out picking the dumps for scrap metal and, talk about good margins. All you need is a pickup truck. You go to the dump, you pick up the scrap metal, you're making money.
Did you ever help him with that?
Yes. I have his old magnet on my refrigerator, to see what kind of metal it is.
In tires?
No, I'm not very good with tires, but he was just amazing. He just always saw money. He loved money. And, I'm growing up and I'm starting to be a teenager and very difficult one, of course. And then, I was starting to think about like, well, what am I going to do? And, he was definitely like, don't go to college. And I was like, well, then what am I going to do?
Right.
And so, said to me, it's too bad you're a girl because your brother's getting the business. And that was, I didn't even at the time, this was like 1995. I was just like, yeah, it's too bad,
Too bad. Which and I asked you, I was like, are you okay with us talking about that? Because, sometimes in families, do we want to bring up all the things that were said or whatever? In 1995, your dad just didn't know better, right? Didn't know that it could be an option for you. No one was talking about it. And so it makes me like super emotional to know that there's just so much more of your story that's going to you get to tell. But I'm so proud of you for like remembering the statement and then doing something about it later. Because I was like, why? You have no experience in heating and air, right?
I didn't know a fucking thing about it.
Yeah. And I told Heather this last night whenever I introduced you. I was like, she had no family, no one in heating and air. And Heather goes, why? Because we're immediately like, do you want to know about the trauma of the trades, right? Like there's
For sure.
Right? And so,
because I got into the trades right around the same time that you did in the late 90s. And
I didn't get in the trades until like 3.5 years.
I got into the trades in the late 90s, and it was not an easy road.
No.
Because it wasn't just my dad who came from a blue collar job that was like, women don't belong in the trades. It was the industry at that time.
So, but then you went on to college.
So my dad, out of tires, he started day trading mutual funds. And he was like,
Your dad was a hustler.
Man, he was an epic hustler. Like, so he was managing more money than, this is a small town. And I had a man reach out to me just a week ago who was like, I'd probably be living in a trailer if it wasn't for your dad. Like he, my house was paid for. If you had $100,000 and you invested it with him before computers, like you would have like $1 million. Like he just 60% year over year. Like he was just, he read the Wall Street Journal every day and he taught himself. And it was, so I would like look through his sheets and see who had like the most money. And I would just kind of follow it and it was just amazing to watch. And then, so before he died, he did say, my brother brought his wife into his business and he was able to open a second location because, she kind of got everybody in line. And, the guys used to be out back smoking pot and she'd be like, get your shit together, man, like get in. So he saw the growth that was able to happen because he brought her in. And so he said to me like, I think I messed up. Like, I think you could have done this, but it was too late at that point. So I did go to college and it's only as an adult now how I recognize how like discouraging that must have been that I was like, I'm going to be a social worker.
Yeah.
So I got my master's degree in social work. I worked for like 20 years in mental health, much to his chagrin.
And that's like, pause. I literally was like, can I book a session with you weekly? Cause like, she was like, and I'm a great counselor or therapist. Right. And I was like, maybe I need to book a session with you.
Mental health for the trade women.
Yes.
I wanted to do a podcast on mental health for the trades.
Yeah, we need to that's another episode of just that because there's so much I've been out there making people frustrated this week with my opinions on mental health and the things that happen after private equity and those things that no one wants to talk about. And so I get super passionate because there is a lot of mental health issues that happen that it's like taboo to talk about because we're only supposed to be talking about the glams and it's not. That's what Facebook is highlight reels for everything. But, we have the opportunity to change that. Right. And so anyways, I know we're going to have to set that aside, stay tuned.
And that's
episode
it's not
2.
Just for the trades. It's with I was in private practice in the Washington, D.C. area. So I would have people come in that worked at the Secret Service and within 30 seconds, they were just their problems and everything.
Mental health is just so, I feel like we've come a long ways because I can go back and I talk really candidly about the first time I got on anxiety medication when I was 15 and everything led up to that, right? All of the childhood things that happened for me. But a lot of my personality and a lot of my behaviors are all from my childhood trauma that I didn't start recognizing until I was in my 30s because no one talked about it. And so I do think that we've come a long ways in mental health in the last 10 years of talking about it, especially going through COVID and all of that. But then it's still so taboo. It's not cool to talk about it. It's not manly. I can't tell you that my business has highs and lows, but the lows almost killed me, and that's what we need to start talking about.
Yeah.
That's what we need to start talking about because we only it's like when I make a Facebook post, right? You guys know, LOL. When I make a Facebook post and the conversation that goes back, the people that are getting really defensive of it, it's like, they don't want that piece of the story told. And they probably have struggled with those same pieces themselves. And it's like, no, bud, I'm not trying to fight you and tell you all these these things. I'm just saying, take care of you, because there's a lot out there that we don't take care of for each other.
Well, and I think the stress of running a business and, especially being a female in the trades and even a man in the trades, there's so much pressure put on, business owners. And there's this facade that you have to put on 100% of the time for your staff and for the people that are looking to you for all the answers, but like you said, with Secret Service people, I mean, they have to wear this facade all day and they have to be strong. And then when you step back out of that, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human beings.
Don't get me wrong, because I'm going to say like this podcast is for the women, right? And we have a lot of fight in us to make sure that we have a seat at the table and all of that. We've done a great job through the years, but I'd almost say that it's becoming harder for a man in the trade because of the facade they have to put on to be accepted and to appear as if they have a successful business. Does that make sense? Like, it's almost like if you're not posing in front of jets and Corvettes and have suites to the Lakers, or I don't know, is that a thing? I don't know. You know what I mean? That you're putting that, and then what happens is there's so much debt because that was all a lie. That was all a lie.
And there's the front that people put on Facebook because they want to be seen a certain way, but at the end of the day, behind a closed door is not the truth.
We were talking about conversation.
I mean, sometimes it is, but
sometimes.
For a lot of people, you always put your best foot forward on Facebook, but there's a lot behind the scenes that people aren't willing to share. And, it's caused a lot of upheaval in the industry, I think, for everybody.
Yeah.
Because the smaller business owners are like, they were nothing 2 years ago. Like, how did that happen? It's like there's Cinderella stories, but like, how did that really happen? So, but I think we got to shelf that because we could all go off the deep end, big time on that, right? And then I think that needs to be a whole other episode. So I'm looking at Kaylee to rebook Rachel for a mental health episode. But back to your story. So private practice.
Yeah. So I was working in private practice and I had finally gotten, I had bounced around a bit between New York and Virginia. And my dad had a stroke one day and he was young at the time. It was very unexpected. And I just kind of had to drop everything one day and go to the hospital with him. And at the time it looked like it was going to be like a long recovery. So me being the girl, and I didn't hesitate. I wrote my landlord, I quit my job, I gave up everything and I moved back to upstate New York. And my dad just went downhill really fast and he passed away. And then I was left with no job and just kind of looking around what the fuck am I going to do now?
Right.
And there was this conversation that my brother had with me. It was very intense for both of us. And a little bit more about the backstory. My dad and my brother, then they were both entrepreneurs and we have different moms. And my dad's parents were born in Germany. They were Jews. They were born into wealthy families with factories and they lost everything in the Holocaust. And so it was my dad's life mission to kind of rebuild some of that wealth. And so my brother grew up on Native American reservation and he had, I think, always thought that he was more 50-50 and he wasn't. It was kind of European and only 14% Native American. And he said, so we're both 50% Ashkenazi Jew because my dad was 100%. And my brother goes on kind of these tangents sometimes. And he was it's in my genetics to make money. And it just, I don't know what's about it. It was well, if it's in yours, then it's in mine.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I was just I'm going to buy a business. That's what I'm going to do. And so I spent 2 years, 3 years looking on BizBuy at all these different things. At one point I thought about a bakery and then I was just I don't like to fucking bake. No,
Me either.
Right. No.
And then I looked at this glass business and, we were kind of I signed the NDA and I was looking through the things and then it kind of fell apart and it just didn't feel right. And it was kind of a disappointment. I'm what am I going to do? And so then my consultant that I was working with was you should look for something like HVAC, it's need-based. I think we were already in COVID at that point. And so I also, fun fact, I have 3 kids. And after my second, I had my tubes tied. And at age 41 during the pandemic, I found out that I was pregnant. So I was up really late that night on BizBuy just looking. And so my consultant had said,
Oscar's face in the side room over here oh no.
That can happen and that's real. My son's beautiful now, but it was a very traumatic time because, I'm
trying to buy a business. I'm trying to do all these things. And now
I had just had a boy. I got rid of all the boy stuff.
Yeah.
It was just really a lot, but he's great. I have 3 kids. It was just meant to be. But so my consultant had said there's a lot of older dudes looking to get older dudes. God forbid there'd ever be ladies in the trades, but
old ladies selling our HVAC business.
Yeah.
It just everything met the criteria. So you want to look for something that's been around a while. This is the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia. And, it's a good market and, it's need-based. Even if it's COVID, you're still working. And it just, I don't know, it just sounded good in my mind. I was like, that makes sense. Like, let's buy an HVAC business. And so that night on BizBuy, I found everything that met that criteria. And, at the time, I think I was just so tunnel visioned into like, I'm going to do this, that I didn't even stop to think how fucking crazy that was, that I just bought a business that I knew absolutely nothing about HVAC.
So that's so incredible to me. I think this is going to be such a good episode for so many people to hear this, because I remember you telling me the story last year at the, like when we leave recording right now in a minute, we're going to run down and go stand at our booth. And I was doing that last year and I was running up and down stairs. And I remember standing there talking to you and you told me the story and I kept like, what the hell? Like respectfully, and I mean this respectfully, right? I was like, so you don't have a husband that knows the trade? And you're like, no. So you don't have a family that knows the trade? No. So you don't have anybody that knew the trade? And you were just like, hey, let's buy a heat and air company. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, tell me
well,
everything
that was my face
right
too.
now.
When you told me last night, I was like,
what? That's this
it's
podcast.
Amazing.
Like, this is why this podcast, like, we wanted to find you. Like, we wanted to find people like you because, I've told this story a million times. The birth of this podcast came whenever I was like, where are the ladies on the panel? Where are the ladies for this? And over, I was told, they're not here. They're not this. They're blah, 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 blah. Right. And then one time someone said, maybe there are just no women doing the business acumen of these men. And I'm like, what the hell ever?
Well,
like,
your story is the premise for this podcast.
Yeah. Like, this is it. You are a power woman of the trades. And like, you just like made your path. Like, I hope you give yourself as much credit as you deserve, because you are doing some big stuff. And I know, and I talk to you not as frequently as we need to talk more frequently, but she'll message me and be like, hey, look at this. And we both sell Daikin equipment. And she has been doing other research and just knows things now that one of the things she was talking to me about, I was like, I don't know, girl, I got to go talk to Oscar about that. That's too technical for me. Yeah. And she's like,
yeah, that was incredible. We had such a good conversation. Last night, everybody was leaving and I was like, no, I'm still talking.
Yeah, you're like, that's brilliant. I hope. So I'm really proud of you. I'm going to get emotional. I know I've only known you a year, but in the year I've gotten to watch through social media and communicating with you, you then rebranded.
Yes.
Right. So how's that been?
So, and because I want to kind of talk about the hard stuff just a little bit. Like, so when I purchased my business, we didn't tell anybody for 6 months. I kind of just watched on the sidelines, because I just had a baby. So I wasn't eager to rush in and be like, I'm a new boss, guys. Yeah. I had also never managed people before. So that's, obviously a whole thing. And so like the first year, and also why it made sense to me is the two gentlemen who had run the business for like the last 30 years had agreed to stay on. So everything seemed to fit. And, the first year I wasn't super involved. I was just kind of reading things and looking at things and just trying to kind of figure this out. And then the second year I got more involved and it was a rough year and we lost money that year. Like, I know nobody ever really talks about that, right? But it was a terrible
Everyone loses money. Like everyone has had a year or five
I just had this conversation with another lady last night about that, where it's really important to understand there are going to be years that you're going to have a loss.
Yeah.
Most businesses' online presence is boring. And by being boring, they're losing out on potential sales and customers. Being interesting and exciting is what draws customers in and gets them to buy from you. But it's hard to be interesting online when you're focused on running your business and taking care of your customers. It doesn't have to be this way. We have the key to unlocking the solution to your problem. Key Heart Marketing can help take your business from boring to brilliant on social media. We can vouch for them. They run our podcast socials. If you want to have a strong social media presence that allows customers to know, like, and trust you, connect with Key Heart Marketing at keyheartmarketing.com.
It's not a trajectory that just goes straight up. It doesn't work
and
like
if
that
that's
in
the
this
story
industry.
you hear, they're full of shit.
They're full of shit.
Yeah, we know. So good for you. Thank you for telling the truth.
Yes, that
We're
second
truth
year
tellers.
was disastrous. It was, the inflation was starting to really amp up. We had sold this big job that, my install manager, my comfort advisor weren't keeping a good eye on it. And I didn't know better at the time to be like all up in their shit, like what the fuck's going on? So it was a debacle. And, I've grown certainly a lot in these last 3 years. And there's been a couple of older white dudes who just would not change, who did not want to work for a woman. And in hindsight, it's so funny because I just came in one day to these guys who'd been in the trades for so long, and they were so, textbook toxic masculinity. Like this one gentleman was, he would just come in every morning and just be like, fuck this place. I fucking, not necessarily to me, but I'd hear it from the other people. And so for our ride along one day, I'm in the van and I'm like, good morning. Like, we're going to DC. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm so excited to do our ride along today. And he was just like, you're going to sit there and look pretty.
Oh yeah. Nuh-uh.
So, and I was just like, oh, you dick. Like, I'm your boss. Like, how dare you? But I didn't say that.
Oscar, I love that Oscar's like hearing this from the side over here, because he's just over there like, that would not have happened. He already knows where this is going.
Well, I mean, can you imagine a bunch of older white trades guys, and this woman comes in and like,
absolutely.
I want to get tablets for you guys, and we're not going to be on paper forever. We need to try to get to be paperless,
because we're in DC and there's a lot of technology around here, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, we just look like we're like, what do you mean we're doing
Stone
paper?
Age,
You're elevating the company to a current level where a lot of companies have just regressed as technology has started coming in faster and faster into this industry.
Yeah. So we're on service site now, but now I know about like margin. Like, I've gotten my crash course MBA, and I did, like at first I was like, I want to go from 5 million to 10 million. And then I realized like, no, I need to work on profitability first. Like all these simple, basic, business 101 things that I started to learn. So I was like, well, fuck 10 million. We're just going to work on profitability and processes this year. So like this past year, I've just been processes and profitability, and it's gotten a lot better. And I had this really proud moment the other day, a couple of weeks ago. My very long-term CFO, who's had some health problems, he was like he had been telling me, like the margins are getting better and better. And he said like the margins are the best that they've ever been. And I was like, really?
Yeah. Yes.
Like that's like this,
Well, that's because of you.
Yeah.
I mean, that was your driving force of driving the company in a certain direction. And back to what Cassie was saying about how, even male business owners, everybody's trying to put their best foot forward and show that they're the successful business. But you hit the nail on the head when you said, like, if you get to 10 million and you're not profitable, you're losing more money than if you lost money at 5 million.
Right.
So if you don't focus on the profitability of the business and the efficiency of the business and the processes and procedures of how the business is going to run, you cannot scale it. You can't. You can try, you can keep selling more, but if your guys are running amok, your labor isn't under control, your material cost is through the roof, why does it matter? It doesn't matter if you did 20 million, if you're not making any money.
You focusing on that is going to give you longevity.
It's going to keep your business sustainable and scalable versus, just being able to say, oh, we went from 5 to 10 million in 2 years. Great. Did you make any money? No.
Oh yeah. We got Oscar's
gross
probably over
profit
there
margin's
glaring
down
at me like
18%.
Yeah. Right.
And you're not even covering your overhead and you're wondering why you're losing money. This is why people call me.
Right. That's why we got Heather now on. Heather's our CFO for quality now. And I was just literally like, because we did scale, we scaled really quickly. But there's still a lot of things like, especially now at this position that we're in, scaling, for us to keep going to the next step, it had to be someone besides me. I was like, now my favorite thing to do is say, I don't know, you need to ask Heather. They're like, for which? For quality or the podcast? Both. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
but yeah. I mean, scaling quickly is, and I've said this to you, and I think I mentioned it to you last, and I say it all the time. You can scale quickly as long as all the other foundational pieces are set up and you're watching them. And one thing that we do at Quality is the daily huddle where we talk about, how is the business doing? Which department is doing well? Maintenance, service, install. What do we need to change? How do we need to pivot? Is there other things that we can offer to customers? Managing that daily, you can scale as fast as you want. I know when I was running Sky, we scaled incredibly fast. We went, doubled our revenue 2 years in a row. And we were able to do it because we had that foundational piece in place. And that's exactly what you're mastering right now, which is even more incredible because I've been in the trades a really long time. Cassie's been in the trades. You just decided, hey, I'm going to buy a business one day. And you figured that out so early on. You're set up for success.
Well, I mean, it feels like it was a while. It took a year or two. And, there were like these big decisions about these key people who had been in the business. They weren't light decisions by any means. It was really difficult, saying this isn't working to somebody who had been at the company and was like a founding member for like 20 years. But he was underbidding his jobs and he just wouldn't. And he'd look at me every week in our meetings and bullshit me and look right at me, and, you know.
Yeah.
And so when I just finally was like, this isn't working, you're not, you know, I read all the books, you know, the seat on the bus. I'm like,
Yeah.
you got to get off my bus, man.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
a hard thing to do when somebody's got that much tenure, because you don't want to, I mean, you're the new person coming in.
And older than me too. That was a thing for a while.
You know, and
felt
have
so
those
weird.
those original people that have been there so long,
Yeah.
but if they're not willing to change and grow with the business, that's a hard decision.
It was.
I know that I've been there, and it's just like, you know, you don't want to let that person go because they just held so much history with the company. But
Well,
if
and
they're
like-
not willing to change,
Yeah.
Right. And how will we function? How will we be okay without them? And
Yeah.
then, you know,
Well,
that-
and then they thought the same thing. You won't make it without me. And then, you know, I've said that story a few times where, you know, when Oscar and I with the company way back, like we're big partiers at Quality. Everyone knows our Christmas party literally is like nation. We were joking before we started who's coming to our Christmas party because we've invited so many people that don't even work for Quality but we look back at Christmas party pictures and see like those first few years and we had like 5 people and then 10 people and then 80 people and whatever. But we always believed that those first 10 people would be with us forever because they were like, they had built and they had done this and yada, yada, yada. And there's like 1 left. And because when we started implementing processes, they weren't intrigued in that. They didn't want a process. They wanted to be cowboys and do it how they wanted to do it. And, you know, the install teams, maybe we had 2 install teams. They didn't want them to be, you know, we wanted it to look the same at the end, no matter who did it. They didn't like that, you know? And so there had to be growth that happened through that. And those original people that we thought would stay with us, they didn't buy in, you know? And so that was really hard to look back on. And I can't imagine having someone, you know, 30 years and you think you have to have that person because you don't know what you don't know. But what it comes down to too, is you were telling us a story last night about talking to someone, maybe a customer experience that wasn't as great as you had hoped it to be. And you're talking to them. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you know the technical piece or not. It's just a customer service.
yeah,
And if you can,
install a system.
yeah. And it's just like, we strive for amazing things every day, but we're going to screw up. You know, we look at the quantity, you know, and we track like if we're in 60 houses a day, we're going to mess something up, right? There's just no way we're going to all those houses and not doing something, messing up, right? But it doesn't matter. They don't care if we know on the other phone what we were fixing or not fixing. It's the customer service that we're going to get it figured out.
Right.
So,
and that's the big piece is what are you going to do when things go sideways?
yeah.
And I try to instill like we're going to own it. Like if
Yes.
we forgot to turn your gas valve on and you go to turn your heat on and then there's no heat.
That
like,
could never happen, Rachel. That could never happen. That never happens, Oscar. No. Or we forgot to flip the switch back or, you know, that could never happen.
What was the outcome of letting this individual go?
I mean, things just got better.
Yeah.
The morale got better. The company culture got better. My margins got better. You know, in hindsight, I was like, I should have done that sooner, but you know,
But there's
I'm
that hesitation, and it's kind of crazy how when you finally let that one person go, whether it's been a tenured person or somebody has kind of bullied their way into keeping their position, you know, you're scared as a manager, an executive, or an owner, like what's going to happen if I let this person go?
That's a whole,
And then seeing that when like the weight that's lifted, and then like you said,
Yeah.
you're just
We
like,
had
God, I should have done it sooner.
we had a salesman that worked for us that was a hard, like in the moment felt like a hard loss. You know, it was I can't believe this loss, you know? And then what happened is I recognized pretty quickly that it was more personal for me than business. But at the end of the day, we have grown so much more by our average tickets and our close rates and our things because I let the personal drive that and not necessarily the business. And so when that department changed, everything changed. I think we don't always realize that, okay, or maybe in the moment we needed to make a really rough decision, but what comes after it? And like you said, growth and a lot of positivity most of the time.
Yep.
We interviewed someone once. It's something that it's stuck with me forever. She said her dad said, I can't think back in 25 years of an employee that left that I could say I had to have to make the business succeed. And first I was like, man, that kind of is rough to hear, right? But with every change comes new things and new growth. And every person that works with us and on our team, we love them and we want them to stay and we want them to be with us, right? But sometimes when the tides change and things change, you know, what her dad was saying was, don't dwell in this. Let's move on. And that's what I've carried. And every single time we've been better on the other side. And I think you've gotten to see that too. So anyway, so you've had the trauma, because there's always some trauma. And then where are we at in the story?
So we did do the rebrand. I'm trying to explain to all my guys that yes, our trucks are getting wrapped Barbie pink, but it's not just to be silly that we're in a very saturated market and there's a lot of white men waving at you on vans that you'll see driving around Northern Virginia, and we're pink intentionally to stand out in a saturated market. And so I had this vision of Barbie meets Rosie the Riveter. Barbie had $1 billion year last year. She has stood the test of time. There's actually, I saw it recently, Monthly Plumbing and HVAC magazine, and there was a picture of one of the ladies on it from last year. That was where I had gotten kind of that inspiration from. And so I just bought 2 new vans last week. They're getting wrapped. So I'm going to have, by the end of next week, probably 7 wrapped pink vehicles out on the roads in Northern Virginia. And they're getting good, I'm getting feedback that when, how many times are women making the decisions in the home nowadays? Right. I don't know what the stat on that is, but it's
95% of the time, I don't know if that's the stat, they are. They're the decision makers.
It's a big deal, especially I think with a younger generation. They're moving to more of a partnership type relationship where, 30 years ago, it was always the husband made all the decisions for the house.
For sure. So
there's a double, one, I want the colors to stand out. And 2, we have terrible traffic where I live as well. So if you're a little girl and you're sitting next to one of my vans and you look at it, you see that woman up there with the big wrench. I also want little girls to see this and
I'm going to cry.
I can be a plumber,
Yeah, because you were told that you couldn't own a tire business, and that's such a full circle. And I love that. I'm trying not to, I don't show emotion very well. Oh my gosh. I love that for you. I love that you are doing that for little girls. And I love that a little piece of you got to be healed in that too. And you're the therapist, not me, but that's so cool. So how did your guys feel when you're pink shirts, pink vans?
I mean, the pink hoodies went like that. The guys are rocking them. I need to order more pink hoodies. Most of them have just been this is what we're doing.
I remember whenever you posted on one of the social media groups about I'm about to do this wrap for feedback, which was really brave of you because everyone is going to give feedback, good, bad, and ugly. And you could tell the manly men that were just I would never work for a company like that. And I was whatever, And then there a bunch were heck yeah. And it was just you got a lot of different feedback.
There was a lot of feedback on that post. Yeah. There was this cartoon character at first, and she was kind of looking back, and, there was a lot of that's so provocative. And they wasn't were sexualizing. And I'm that's really not,
it was
actually.
A stretch. You did take that feedback and at least help remodel her, rebrand her. I didn't think of that, but isn't that so funny how if they didn't like it, they turned it provocative. This cartoon character that's literally holding a wrench, but she had her back facing, but she was turned, and it was super cute. It was not provocative, but because her backside was seen first. Well, okay, the front side's got something there too, right? So, I mean, whatever. So, but she did take that criticism and helped with the team that did that, readapted her. Does she have a name? Your art?
Betty.
Okay.
We named her. Yes. She's awesome. Coming to life soon. Awesome. With, a little video. And yeah, she and I wanted to be disruptive in the market, but I didn't want to offend anyone.
Yeah. And I'm sure I try not to talk politics, but I'm sure in DC, in that area, you could definitely cause all kinds of a stir, right? In Oklahoma, we're the Wild West, we are like I said, not talking politics, but we're a very red state. We're gun toting, blah, 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 right? It's hard to offend in that direction with us, but I could see where in your area, one way or the other, you could offend. And that was really smart to pay attention to, because not everyone does, because they're oh, cool, brand, cute, I'm doing it, let's kick in. That's one great thing about hiring the right person to do your brand, is making sure that they help you understand your market and all of those things. And so most people, when they help you with the brand, they don't want you to go crowdsource opinions on social media, but I was glad you did, because you at least got to see, because you had sent it to me and I was hell yeah, I love it. And then next thing I know, random. She posted it, and then the feedback was so mixed at first, and I was what? And I'm looking at it trying to figure out how this Betty was so provocative, and I'm okay. So, but she's come to life, and it's really cool. cool. So that's awesome. So how you said the guys, because I think at first, if that was one of the feedbacks too, is like your text, they're going to hate it and no issues.
Listen, if you don't like it, then you're not the right employee for me.
100%.
Our tagline is where women lead, comfort follows.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're not down with it, then
you're not going to get it anyways.
The other guy,
Yeah, that's crazy, but cool. And there's so much in there. So, okay. So what's next for Argent? Because you've grown a lot. You've done a lot.
Well, we haven't grown revenue wise yet. Like my, purpose for this past year and goals were centered around, processes and profitability, so we've been focusing on both of those. I did hire my first female service technician. I have a female service manager who I've brought here with me. So I want to continue to get more women in the trades. I'm connected to the local HVAC program, and it's such a disappointment because it's not a disappointment. He's a wonderful man teaching the program, but there's no women, there's no girls. When I went in there, it was literally all boys. And I was like, where's the girls? So I had asked the teacher there, I'm like, are girls just not being steered in this direction? Do they not know? Because there's, it's like a vocational school. It's there's one HVAC program in all of Northern Virginia, which is kind of crazy.
Oh, wow.
Or there might be one other one way over on the other side of the Beltway. But, my thing that I'm passionate about is really bringing more women in the trades. I want to get to a point where, we're just kind of have our shit together at Argent. All of our processes are, more streamlined and things are running efficiently. And I just want to bring opportunities for these women that I want to, wherever they are.
I bet if you went to the local high schools, they would welcome you to tell your story.
Absolutely. And that's something that we do in Tulsa. Kaylee, I always talk about Kaylee. Anyone who listens to the podcast knows who Kaylee is, right?
I totally know.
Kaylee on the backside, Quality and Empower Women, but she does a lot of those events and helping talk and show who we are. And I can tell you, our focus is, and let us be very clear, our focus is to always hire the right person for the job, whether they are male or female. But we want to introduce women to the space so they understand. And I think because I have had such a loud mouth about that in Tulsa, we have gravitated to having female technicians, having the female installer, we have had applicants apply that have said, I know that you guys will hire women. And that's how you make a change in your area. That's how you make a change of just show what's available, what you can do. And when, you go to those kids events, the high school events, take people that can do the work, or talk about all the things that can happen. And, it's funny sometimes how you can get really defeated and think, am I really making a change? But you can make a change in your small part of the world, and just every day continuing to advocate and talk about it.
And I had to have a conversation with I get so excited and overzealous about it. I said to my woman service tech, I'm like, I don't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. I'm just so happy to have you go.
Yes.
Because I'm always I'm just so excited about it. And then I'm like, well, I definitely don't get, I don't quite get the same level of energy for the guys.
But it's the point of hey, girl, you can do this. You can go out in the space and do this, and it's empowering to them to know that they're making right decisions for themselves and getting to help them, grow in the trade as well. So,
and that they have the same opportunities that weren't once offered.
Well, and and I said to her, and I was like, if you ever need anything, you have my, don't hesitate, so I just, want to make her feel, supported and empowered. And, I'm sure that not every owner does that, but, I just want her to know that, I don't know, she is special. There's not, and I was asking her for her feedback on how she's being perceived in people's homes, right? When the woman shows up. And I think it's some of the older women who are kind of what are you doing here?
Yeah. It's funny too, because in Oklahoma, we had several that were had asked, how is that, with female technicians? And that's why I always go back to, we're the Wild West in Oklahoma. No one cares. We have never gotten really crazy feedback. Every once in a while, someone will call to make sure that a man can verify the diagnosis, or that's been few and far between. That's the nice thing about Oklahoma, I think, is because Heather lives in Oregon and she works for Quality remotely. And the differences in Oregon and Oklahoma are insane. All the time I'm like, hey girl, we the Wild West out here. We don't even worry about it. But those are things as if you are listening and you are interviewing and interview a female applicant, make sure you have some of these in your mind of how to support her in her role, how to make sure she's safe. We we just recently added Rilla, the call by call. And one of the biggest pieces for Rilla for me was, and me and Oscar, like there's so much that can come from Rilla, but one of the biggest pieces was the safety that I feel will naturally come by having that recording, right? Knowing what happened in the house with that person while she was in there or he was in there. Because
100%.
the world's getting crazy, I wish it was live to where, they could have Mayday. I hope maybe that's coming one day.
That's not a bad idea,
but
actually, to have a button that they could say,
so funny.
Get me out of here.
Right.
But there are, some of the customers are,
what are we doing? And we're going into people's houses and sending people by themselves, So anyways, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. I can't say that enough. I hope that anyone listening that hears your story, reach out. We'll put in the show notes how to reach out. If you're on social media, reach out to talk to her. Like she's treaded a path that many have not done. I am in the space because my husband, who is a deer, chose heating and air, and the other day, literally, I have to tell this joke because my husband will keep me humble. If nobody else in this world will, Oscar Pound does. And I said, honestly, this is so stressful. I should have just been a trophy wife. And he said, you probably could have been if you didn't decide to be a tryhard in the trades. And I was like, oh my God. Everyone was laughing so hard. And I was like, he can give me that banter and I appreciate it. But I didn't know, I went to school to be a dental assistant. If you've heard me talk about that, First of all, that's gross. So who knew that I would end up in plumbing, right? But I didn't know what was possible. And it's like the bug bit me. And try hard is funny because that's exactly like when the bug bit me in the business, it bit me and it latched on. And then I was like, oh, we're going to break down walls and show a different way to do this. And
the trades needed you, Cassie.
Let's put that on the trades needed you, Cassie. Let's put that on a shirt and see how many people. It ain't going to sell out. Well, Rachel, we're definitely going to book you for a second time just for mental health completely. So stay tuned because I think that it could be a profound episode for a lot of people that need to hear the truth, the raw, the real, what's
I
really
100%
there.
Agree.
But in the meantime, if you would like to reach out and connect with Rachel, we will put her information in the show notes. And congratulations for everything you've been doing.
Yeah, well done.
This has been Power Women of the Trades. Like what you hear so far? Leave us a review on Apple. And make sure to listen to our other episodes wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.